Krishna Bhanu Swami, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Saraswati Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The subject of this has something to do with Lilamrta, the history of Prabhupada, etc. And of course, it's very necessary that all devotees have a relationship with Srila Prabhupada, and the Lilamrta gives us details of his life, and from reading them we can get some inspiration about various aspects of Islam. So, Srila Prabhupada, of course, was born long ago. So this was long before any of our births. It's over 130 years ago now. So it's a long time ago. This is the very humble place where Srila Prabhupada was born. He is a tree, in other words, he was born. And actually, after so many years, Islam actually was able to purchase this property. It took many, many years because there were many landowners sharing the land and deals with all these different people. But finally, Islam managed to purchase this place. So this was the humble birthplace of Srila Prabhupada over 130 years ago. He was fortunate to have a Vaishnava childhood. His father was a wonderful devotee and taught him and inspired him how to worship Radha and Krishna. As you know, from youth, the person has habits of worshiping Krishna. This can have a very great influence on his life. You see, for instance, in the case of Krishna, he was worshiping Krishna in childhood. So, very, very auspicious. So his childhood was, say, Krishna conscious, but the times of India were quite turbulent at that time. After Lord Chaitanya, and then gradually the Muslims took over everything. They had it in Lord Chaitanya's time, and the British took over. So there was a lot of cultural and educational changes that took place throughout India, particularly under the British. And the British established their own educational system, and Srila Prabhupada also was brought up in that system. His guru, Bhanu Swami, was also brought up in that system, and even Bhanu was brought up in that British system of education. And one can see that reflected in Bhaktivinoda expressions and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's expressions in their works about this British influence in their works. Of course, that culture, along with the language, the culture of Britain and the way of thinking of Britain also began to influence India at that time. And then there was a counter reaction to that among some Indians who tried to assert vague values or Hinduistic values. There was also attempts to kind of combine the two things into a modern religion as well. But there was also things going on religiously and intellectually. And of course, at this time also then there was a big problem with the independence and the rulership of the British. So British were ruling, and then the Indians became very nationalistic and started rebelling against them. Well, this is all happening at this time. And Srila Prabhupada also became his educational period. He was caught up in this type of movement. And in 1922, this is where he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. This is where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati established one of his preaching missions. So this place as a student, he was introduced to Bhakti Saraswati Thakur. And this was a turning point in his life. Though he had been educated from childhood with the worship of Radha Krishna, then he was educated by the British, so he was also influenced by the nationalistic movement. And then when he met Bhakti Saraswati Thakur, then he finally understood that there was something higher than nationalism or religion. And that was to follow the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So since that time, the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took hold and be more serious about that. And in 1932, he took Diksha. So that was after 10 years, he finally took Diksha. In the meantime, he was working after his graduation, he was working as a gymnast to support his family. He was traveling around India, and he had some sort of business in Lilamrta. So that place, the Gaudiya monk had established a temple. So he would often go to Pakistan, England, and he got Diksha in 1932. All along, he was remembering this order of Bhakti Saraswati Thakur to preach to the English-speaking, intelligent class of people. But he never got so much opportunity because he was supporting his family, his business, etc. But nevertheless, I was thinking of that. And of course, Bhakti Saraswati Thakur then disappeared in 1937. And Srila Prabhupada was still working and working, whatever. He managed to print the BTG in 1944. And this, of course, was his first actual work, literary work. In 1950, he took Lilamrta and began living in the medieval Lilamrta temple. This is the one in Bali. A very, very simple room. A very, very simple room. And so this is where he lived. And this is where he was translating things. Lilamrta means he left his family life, so he had no financial support after this time. He simply had to survive on his own. He tried living in various building huts, but they weren't so sympathetic to his ideas also. In 1959, he took sannyas, and then began to publish his write and publish Srimad Bhagavatam, 3 volumes, first canto. This came out 1965, actually. So this was a big accomplishment for him because he got no financial support. He had to raise his own money and publish the book as well, of course, finance his own life. And he was doing this in Vrindavan and in Chippewa, Delhi. This is the room in Delhi, which is also national purchase in Delhi. Very simple room again. So when he was not in Vrindavan, he would stay in this room in Delhi and negotiate with the printers for printing his Bhagavatam. So in this way, he was, after he took Lilamrta and sannyas, he was dedicating his life to writing. And so therefore he published his Srimad Bhagavatam. After the struggle, he published the work, and it was quite an endeavor to do so. Of course, at this time you can see that during these ages, this was the first time he was 1944. What was that? War, Second World War going on. Meanwhile, the British were fighting with the nationalists. India was also a lot of conflict in India going on. And after the war, and finally, India got independence. It was 1950, 48. 47, something like that, independence, and then India also went through some sort of nationalistic change, but It also went through a rather atheistic period of industrial development, modernization, etc., and rejection of old beliefs as being old-fashioned and not too conducive with modernization. So this was something that happened after the independence. So people were not so much interested in religious subject matters as being about it. So he published it like he tried to distribute it in India, but not much sales. But then Prabhupada thought, well, maybe I should go somewhere else. I'll go to America, because America's country with a big name at the time. And he made friends with Srimati Gauraji, and she gave him a free ticket on her freighter. This was not a passenger ship, it was a freighter. But they usually have a little room, two or three rooms there, for passengers also. So she gave Prabhupada a ride on the job in 1965 to go to America. So America was, of course, it was a very attractive name at that time. India was that restriction for such a problem to even take any money with it. We had 32 rupees or so, it was nothing. And then he landed in America with no real support. It was a very, very challenging situation. So Prabhupada arrived, and this is what he wrote. My dear Lord Krishna, you are so kind upon this useless soul, but I do not know why you have brought me here. Now you can do whatever you like with me. I can guess that you have some business, otherwise, why should you call me to this demoniac place? So Prabhupada didn't really have a good idea about America, even though he was going there, and it was so modernized, etc. And the reason, of course, there was no Krishna consciousness there at all. It was a very famous country, world leader, but no Krishna consciousness. They didn't know anything about Krishna. So Prabhupada arrived in this place. There's no one hardly at all. He had one name of a person that he got from a friend in Mathura. His son was living in America, so that we went there to that place in America. Then he came back to New York City and tried preaching there. And of course, he was endeavoring at the same time he was checking back to see if there was a ship back to India. So he was a little bit unsure. But then he kept persevering. And of course, America at that time was also going through a lot of changes. India went through a lot of changes in the last 30 or 40 years. America was going through a big change after the Second World War also. And this was the age where the youth were very, very rebellious against the materialistic way of life in their parents, etc. And it gave rise to several generations of rebellious youth. First there were the beatniks and then there were hippies. It was all in place in the 1950s, 1960s, and 70s. So the Prabhupada began a movement, tried to get a movement there, and he began preaching. This famous picture from Thomas Square Park was there in 1966. And he did Kirtan. And then it got some publicity. The young people began to listen and establish, he incorporated basically at that time the basic principles of his movement, so he made a legal entity. He had tried something in India that he had devotees that was not support for that. So we tried it in a legal entity in America. So this was a very good step. And this time, this movement, it lasted. So very quickly from that point, in the middle 1960s onward, the movement somehow spread due to Prabhupada's great personality. His spiritual nature and his personality. It began spreading. And so from New York, we went to San Francisco, 1967. In 1968, then the first Bhagavad Gita then there's another version of 1972 came out. That's the second version. But this is our first version, our British version. So while he was doing his preaching work in these first years, 66, 67, 68, but he was translated also. And so finally this book came out. And in 1969, the movement also had spread to England. And then the Beatles and George Harrison became interested, and they made this Apple record at that time, which became the #1 hit in England and Europe at that time. So in this way, Hare Krishna became very, very famous. And then it goes to America also. So within these few years, like 3 years or so, the movement actually somehow from zero became very, very famous in the Western world. And in 1970, Prabhupada established the GBC, which is a governing body commission to manage this fund. And in 1972, he established BET to print and preserve his books. So in these ways, he could set up some system for ISKCON and for his books. He made a separate organization called BET. And of course, the movement gets spread, and more and more people. I don't know the year of this, but it's 1970 something. This is Radiatra. This is San Francisco Radiatra. So we see a lot of people there. And then Prabhupada also came back to India. So this is 1970. If you read Lilamrta, you'll find that there's a lot of descriptions of Prabhupada traveling around India. He came back in 1970. And of course, many devotees in the West were wondering why Prabhupada was going back to India. But Prabhupada wanted to do that, so he came back to India and started preaching in India. So this time, of course, Prabhupada was more successful. When he had left zero, when he came back, then people began taking interest. Why they're taking interest? Because there were Americans there. There are foreigners there. White elephants. So actually, there are many advertisements there. I think Humble Butter had one thing with Hare Krishna, and some foreigners had some advertisements for their butter. And like that, and movie stars also. The movies came out on Hare Krishna, etc. later on. So anyways, it caught on in India due to the foreign devotees. But Prabhupada was very persistent. He went around India, various places, like Surat, etc. And in all places he was asking people, give some land, give some land. Actually, in Vrindavan, someone gave some land. So Prabhupada started building a temple, and it opened in 1978. No, not 78. Before it was afterwards. 77. Maybe it was there, but I don't know if they inaugurated. Yeah, they inaugurated before. 76. Sorry, I made a mistake. And meanwhile, in Bombay also was a big struggle there from 1970 onwards. Nobody donated land, so Prabhupada bought some land, and then it went through all sorts of legal difficulties like that. But eventually, that was also built up. That was established. That was actually opened 70 after Prabhupada's disappearance, 1 year afterwards. So it was a struggle. So a lot of the money actually didn't come from India. We had a life membership program that was not enough. So a lot of the money came from India, from America. So, and I think there were people also went to Japan and got money from Japan also. So that I think the Vrindavan Guru was one of the constructed with the donation from Japan. So anyway, a lot of the finances came from other places. The money to buy the property even in Bombay came from And of course, since that time, temple became very popular. Similarly, in 1972, Prabhupada finally purchased some land in Mayapur. It's also foreign money. And then construction, long building, etc., foreign money. But of course, since that time, India has also been a little more prosperous and we've been able to build up again. So in this way, in India, the movement finally took hold and finally became financially independent. So we have many, many temples now around India, which came out not with foreign influence or foreign money, but simply by donations coming from India itself. So all around India, there are so many temples now. In Delhi itself, there's 6 big temples, 7 big temples, and another 5 or 6 smaller temples. And all is locally financed. So Prabhupada had a vision for India and it finally succeeded. But it took some struggle in the beginning to do that. And meanwhile, around the world, temples also kept springing up in different countries. So we had England, Canada, Germany, and France, and Italy, and other countries around Europe. Prabhupada also went to Japan, established a center there. We went to Australia, established there. Came to Malaysia also. So this way it spread around the world through the result. So this is actually in a very short period of time, about 10 years, preaching Prabhupada in the Western world, and then it spread around the world. That also came back to India and spread. And since that time, of course, it has spread all around the world further. So a remarkable achievement within 10 years, probably. And most of the work was done then. Of course, he established something in India. He printed first of all in Srimad Bhagavatam. But later on, the rest of the Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, and Chaitanya Charitamrita also came out in the 1970s. So within his lifetime, he established temples, and he established the basis for expansion. He also established his literary works from Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, as well as Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada passed away, disappeared in 1977, and then his vision was that the movement should continue after that period. So how would it continue? This is a problem for many organizations, material organizations, and also for religious organizations, how they continue. Most of the religious organizations fail. Within 10 years of the disappearance of the leader, the whole thing kind of disappears, fades away. It's no longer prominent anymore. And we see many religious movements came from India in the 1970s, 80s, and disappeared. No longer present. Of course, we can also say about Christian organizations also, they come up with a good line like that. So that's the problem. After the initial leader, the founder disappears, then the organization begins to fall apart. This was the problem with the Gaudiya Math and Bhakti-Sangha Saraswati Thakur. He wanted to keep the movement together. Within 10 years, it began to fracture. And it's still in that situation that they never came back together. So Prabhupada was very concerned about that, and he tried to make arrangements for that. One is to have the governing body commission established to act as the manager of it. And he did not appoint one leader or one guru. Bhakti-Sangha Saraswati Thakur wanted such assistance, and he had a GBC also. But later on, after Bhakti-Sangha Saraswati Thakur's disappearance, they appointed one person in charge. And then after that, the whole movement became a fraction. So Prabhupada insisted on the governing body commission, so he established that very early in the movement. And he did not appoint one guru, many gurus as well. So in this way, Prabhupada wanted to keep the movement together. Still, we see that Islam does have problems, but we have to somehow keep the vision of Srila Prabhupada in mind, in spite of his absence, physical absence. So there are many ways in which we can do that. Of course, as I said, Prabhupada established the basic organization for that by founding the GBC. At the same time, those devotees who became devotees after Prabhupada's disappearance should not think that there's much difference. Most of the time, devotees will think, okay, devotees 1970s have associated with Srila Prabhupada, now we don't, or another generation, or 2 generations later. True. But in another sense, those devotees who were Srila Prabhupada were with Srila Prabhupada when he was present, but most didn't get direct association. Very little direct association. Some association of devotees, like in America, they saw Prabhupada once come out of the car and go to the temple in Los Angeles. And they got initiation by mail. That's their association, direct association with Srila Prabhupada. And of course they sat in some classes with Srila Prabhupada. So, very little association. Those that got direct association, of course, were very fortunate. Those are the leaders in society. But most of the common devotees, the rest of the devotees didn't get much association at all. Very little. And we see in the case of Prabhupada himself, he got very little association of devotees himself. So he talked for a few minutes, maybe 5 times in his life. He got direct association more than a few minutes. So, yes, it's very fortunate to get a direct association with Srila Prabhupada. Even if there's not that direct association, we should not consider it too much of a loss, because Srila Prabhupada made some arrangements for us to continue his presence through the whole of this time. Of course, Srila Prabhupada made one title, Founder Acharya of ISKCON. So that indicates that Srila Prabhupada has a relationship with all devotees forever. So actually in 2013, the GBC made this statement. All members of ISKCON for all generations are encouraged to seek shelter of Srila Prabhupada. All members of ISKCON are entitled and encouraged to have a personal relationship with Prabhupada through his books, teaching, service, and his ISKCON society. So, all devotees, though they may be second or third or fourth generation after disappearance of Srila Prabhupada, still have a connection with Srila Prabhupada. So, one should not feel that separation. So this is very important because ISKCON keeps expanding. So Asia, Europe, America, Australia, and other places, Africa, and all the continents, devotees keep expanding the movement. And we keep getting more and more centers, more and more temples all the time. So we have to keep the unity there also. And it has to span over many places, many cultures. And as well, it spreads over time. So we have the movement going generation after generation after generation after generation. So that same organization with Srila Prabhupada has to carry on generation after generation. And place after place after place. And of course, as we do that, not only are we going in place and time, we're also going in terms of people. We're getting more and more people. It's expanding all the time. Very good. Because Lord Chaitanya made the prediction, my name should be spread in all towns and villages. And Srila Prabhupada was ambitious to spread Krishna consciousness everywhere around the world. So very good. At the same time, we do have to think of how to manage all how to keep them together, how to keep up the standards with so many people in so many places and so many cultures and over time. So these are the problems, we could say, or the challenges that are faced by the organizers of this and the devotees in general. How to preach and expand, and at the same time, how to keep unity and how to keep Prabhupada in the center of the world. So these are basically what the devotees have to do. And it's not just things are established and then go on. Things keep changing all the time. This is the nature of time. So, therefore, to succeed, factually succeed as a unified movement now and in the future, we do have to consider various things. So, these are 5 principles of success, actually taken from the business world. So if you want a successful company to succeed in the future, you have 5 principles. But the same principles will apply to anything. It also applies to a spiritual movement. So one is how you treat the public. So we have an organization that we're trying to preach, so we're looking at the public. If we don't preach, you don't have to look at the public. But because we're a preaching movement, then we have to see everybody around the world. So we have to develop strategies for preaching and attracting the public. So we see that Prabhupada tried in India. He printed Bhagavatam and was growing to different people. Not much happened. Then he went to America. Same book, same preaching. Something happened there. Different country, different culture, different people. Also a different time, because they were in a different time zone then. They were in hit generation. That wasn't happening in India. India was trying to industrialize at that time. So, according to the place, we have to figure out how to communicate to that public properly. So, what Prabhupada was speaking was appealing to the people of America, young people of America at that time. It was not appealing to the people of India at that time. So, according to the time that Prabhupada preached properly in America at that time. But we see that hippies disappeared. That type of people was no longer there within 10 or 15 years. And it's a different generation of people with different ideas, different culture, etc. So then, you cannot preach the same way. Some things have been renovated, some things have to change. So therefore, preaching in the 80s and 90s has to change somewhat. And when you get to 2000, 2010, 2020, things have to change again. We do have to preach to different people. Yeah? So I mentioned here that in the 1970s, 68, 69, People's Been record with this guy, Hare Krishna, became very famous because of that letter. And if you say the Beatles were supporting this guy nowadays, nobody knows who they were. Young people don't know about them. I see on YouTube, these people have the little programs and say, hearing the Beatles for the first time, I was shocked. They had some very nice music. I heard about it until, last week or something. They didn't know who the Beatles were. So, you can't preach. The Beatles are supporters. Who are they? We don't know. So, people are different. They have different music now. They have what is it? Punk rock. What do they have nowadays? This electric stuff. I don't know what it is. Anyway, all this electronic stuff that doesn't even beat instruments with a little percussion in it. So anyway, they have all sorts of different people nowadays, and of course communications have changed so much. In Prabhupada's time, they didn't have movie cameras. They didn't even have videos then. When Prabhupada was around. That came afterwards. And they had this huge tape recorders. And the problem was a server carrying around a huge tape recorder with it everywhere. Now we have these little guys. And everything's on the phone actually nowadays. Telephones were difficult for India at that time. It took you 5 hours to take a telephone from Calcutta to Bombay. They just sit there and wait for the call to come through. And you couldn't hear the call until it came through. It would take 5 or 6 hours. That's 1970s. Up until the 80s, it's still like that in India. Just to make one little phone call from Calcutta to Bombay, it would take 6 hours waiting for the call to come through. Now everything's around the world. You can get on in a few minutes. It's not a problem. So communications have changed a lot. This technology has changed. Now this is something else called AI coming up. So people wonder, well, how do we preach with AI? This is a new thing coming up, and Islam has to adapt to that. We've only finally adapted to internet by having Zoom meetings. Well, we're a little bit later on that. But even now, we're saying AI is the future, and you just didn't get Islam also how to adapt to the AI world, preaching in that world. So you have to think a lot about how to adapt our preaching. The other element is how you treat your members, like in a corporate society, a business unit, treat your employees in a certain way in order to keep the thing going. It has the loyalty. So the same in this time. We have to care for the devotees and help them cultivate the Krishna consciousness properly. So this is another area of concern. Another, of course, is that we have to measure the results. If something doesn't work, then we have to try something else. If the old thing preaching method doesn't work, we have to try a new one. We can't just keep using the old method over and over. We have to try something else. So we have to measure the results first, and then we have to innovate. So this is a very important part of companies. They have to innovate because time is going on and people are changing, tastes change, how people hear things change, everything changes. So a company has to innovate and develop new products that can interest the people. Otherwise, the company disappears. For ISKCON, of course, this is one of the main areas of difficulty because we don't like to change things because we're supposed to be so traditional and follow scriptures. But we see the Prophet also changed some things. He didn't do exactly as he previously did. He's preaching to the Western world and he simplified things an awful lot. So, in the same way, even now we will have to think of how to keep the basic principles intact and what things can we change within ISKCON itself that may not be conducive for preserving and expanding the movement now in the future. So it's always a tricky question. What can we do, what cannot we? And we do have all these arguments of ISKCON, such as we have to keep everything exactly the same, therefore preaching should be book distribution, sent down the streets. That's our preaching. Of course, the opposite is, okay, we can do internet preaching, we can do indirect preaching, we can preach to all sorts of people, all sorts of ways, like that. So, people will always have this argument on how to preach. The fifth thing is we have to have efficient systems, which is such a bureaucracy to take care of everything so we're legally proper, financially proper, etc. Very necessary, but also bureaucratic. If you don't have these things, your system also going to fall, your movement can fall apart. So, as I mentioned, this preaching is very interesting, how to adapt to the present time. We have certain things, of course, we don't change. Certain things we do change. So, this is one of the main elements of Prabhupada's founding document, to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large, and to educate all people in the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life and achieve real unity and peace in the world. This is from the 7 purposes of Islam. So preaching is one of the main factors. So we always have to think of how to get more people. So we always have religious delusion because progress is reaching the basis. We have street chanting, right now, Sankirtan. We give out prasadam. We have classes. We have festivals. And we have other sorts of gatherings for a congregation. One interesting factor is that in the beginning of the movement, the preaching was focused on making devotees. And devotee meant a full-time devotee living in the temple. That continued until 1980s. And then after that, especially in the 90s, 2000s, then there was a shift and it went to congregational preaching. Devotees were less in the temple and more outside the temple. That is, Vyasas. Now we have job, come to the temple. Now the way of preaching, but in the beginning it wasn't really recognized. Later, the congregational minister for that. In the beginning, nobody thought about it. Come and go to join the temple things. So, this is one way of preaching was altered. But then the opposite one kind of happens. We just preach the congregation, and then you don't get any devotees joining the temple. So you got a small temple with big congregation. That's what's happened in many temples. I think also in Malaysia. And happened in America and Australia also. Less devotees in the temple, most of the congregational devotees outside. So it is quite common to go that way, completely congregation. So then we have to balance this somehow. Because we do have to have full-time devotees, we do have that managers in the temple as well. And for that we do need full-time dedicated people. We have to figure out preaching strategies for both. Preaching to the public in general and congregation, preaching to get full-time members. So, some temples have thought about that. In India, they realized that quite early in the maybe 1980s and 90s, so they developed a college preaching program, which has become very successful. So in this way, now we get some temples maybe have hundreds, 200, maybe 300 fully dedicated brahmacharis in the temple, coming from colleges after they graduate from college. So very, very good. And then there's no lack of devotees to manage the temple itself. But that hasn't developed in some countries, so they're still struggling with the temple devotees. But this also creates a problem for, management in the future. Because who takes over? Who succeeds the managers? You have to take someone outside to manage the temple. So you have a congregational person managing the temple, and not somebody living in the temple. So that will automatically make emphasis more on congregation. So then you kind of defeat the purpose. So you don't have any full-time dedicated people. You just keep going on that way. So temples will have to think how to get some young dedicated people to join full-time. So anyway, we have to adopt we have to adopt Desha Patra. That means according to time, according to place, or according to type of person. But we are keeping our principle as it is, but making the arrangement according to the circumstance that is required. So we have certain things we have to change in order to appeal to the people at a certain place at a certain time. And we have new audiences, new methods, but the basic principles remain the same. So, Prabhupada also wrote in the 7 purposes of ISKCON to bring the members of the society together with each other and near to Krishna, the prime aim of the industrial development, and within the members and humanity at large, that each soul is part and parcel of the quality of Godhead. So this aspect is not only preached, but within society we take care of the members. So that's one of the founding principles also. So the GBC also realized that, and therefore they began working on devotee care. So there's actually a whole part of the congregational ministry called devotee care, in which they Krishna takes a special appreciation for his devotees who are engaged in listening for his preaching the word, and he will give you special care and guidance at all times because we're sincerely trying to serve him in this way. This is Srila Prabhupada speaking. A pure devotee is kept in the hands of Krishna, just like a precious jewel. When you hold something precious in your hand, you are very careful, and similarly Krishna holds the devotee and takes care of him. So the society of ISKCON also has to take such an attitude and care for the devotees in all ways. So, of course, there are many cares. There's physical care, mental care, spiritual care. Generally, of course, we concentrate on spiritual care, but particularly devotees who are in the temple, we also have to have physical and mental care, and to some degree for congregation. So there's all sorts of online devotee care courses now to cater to the needs of congregational and to the devotees living in the temple. The mission of these devotee care groups is to ensure that the Vaishnava virtue of care pervades all aspects of the ISKCON society, support and provide special care services that enhance the spiritual, emotional, physical, and social well-being of all ISKCON members. This is a very broad topic because it's covering every aspect of life for devotees, so very, very broad but also necessary. So this is the aspect of caring for the members of the society. Okay, so we have to measure results. So Prabhupada was often interested in results. So he was interested in bookstores. That's a measurable result. So he encouraged the devotees to have one of his courses, a number of books distributed. Every year at the GBC meeting, there's a DBT report, and they show the number of devotees who are the number of books distributed every year by country and temples, etc. to see its progress all the time. So that's one way we can see how books are distributed, and we can measure our progress that way. Not the only way, of course. Another way, of course, is how many devotees you've made. That's another way. How many devotees are chanting 60 rounds or 4 rounds or whatever. We can have all sorts of methods of doing that. I don't know if that has been actually systemized so much within our society. So various ways. And of course, from this, we can also see if certain methods are successful and certain methods are not successful. How to distribute books. So some methods may be not so good, some are better. By measuring the results of other methods, then we can see which is a better method. But of course, it may differ in different places also. So book distribution in one place, we have to use one method. In another place, another method. So anyway, we have to measure results always. And we have to establish systems, which looks a little materialistic, but as I said, we have to take care of practical things. So Prabhupada said, there's a spiritual side and there's a material side also. That is not material side. That's also spiritual side. Means systematic management. Otherwise, how will it be done? So Prabhupada also recognized that we do have to have some practical systems. Management should follow preaching like a shadow. Manners should always be preaching. Basic principle, of course, is decentralized, not over-managing. Self-sufficient temples where each branch maintains independent identity while keeping the founder, Charya, in the center. Management should be based on humility, tolerance, and cultural respect. If we do have that management, it also has to be devotees in the management. So, the important point here, of course, is innovation, willingness to change something to increase our effectiveness now and in the future. So, Prabhupada also viewed innovation not as changing principles, but using new methods and tools to effectively spread Krishna consciousness within this message, especially in modern context. So, Prabhupada used printing press Printing press itself was an innovation. Before that, it was writing on palms. That was the way you made books in India. British brought printing press. Innovation. They never thought of doing scriptures with a printing press before. Now they could do it, and scriptures could be very, very easily distributed. And so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati took that up. And he actually purchased printing presses. And he was constantly printing works of that. So that was innovation of Gaudiya Sampradaya. Print all the works. And then Prabhupada took that a step further. And he established printing press in BPT in Los Angeles and whatever, and started printing so many high-class books about what to check out. So that's like one innovation. But we see nowadays everything's on the internet. So even books are not necessarily printed; they're all online. So even BBT is online, and you don't have to print the Bible without reading. You can purchase the Bible and you can read it online everywhere on the internet. So due to innovation, therefore, book printing may be obsolete in the future. Who knows? We have everything all digitalized. So this is something we have to think about, how much we want to digitalize everything. There's innovation in all spheres, not just printing books, but in preaching, as I said. Nowadays, a lot of online preaching takes place, which was there after the 90s, 2002, whatever. But ISKCON actually went into online preaching more after or during COVID. That's when people started using it. But then they discovered that preaching online, it's by sitting in your room and other people sitting in their rooms, you can make devotees. So this is a shocking discovery. So like our devotees in Chennai, two devotees at Brass couple, they started online courses for Bhagavad Gita, like 5-day course or something like that, a 1 hour a week or something like that. And then they expanded that after you do that course and another course and whatever. And that way they managed to get people, like 10,000 people chanting 4 rounds, 10 rounds, 16 rounds. Get 10,000 people doing that with hardly any charge. And then they buy books, etc. And then they get donations. So one devotee in Mangalore, he did the same thing. He established in like 5 or 6 different languages: Hindi, Telugu, Malayali, Tamil, Bengali. He has devotees giving classes in all sorts of languages. And he managed to purchase land with the donations. No fees for the courses, but they donated. And he managed to collect enough money to purchase some land and build a temple. So I think just by not even meeting the people, just by online courses. So the potential there is very, very great. So there's all sorts of ways. So this is another way of innovation, preaching online, that people have discovered and were able to utilize very nicely. So innovation in terms of technology and preaching and all that is there. The last section, the usual way of preaching is we preach and then you should take initiation. So that's kind of the final step when you take initiation, then you're a real devotee, connected with the Sampradaya. That's kind of the general thing. That, of course, was how we've been preaching up until present time. Started with Sri Prabhupada. But at the same time, you find there are some problems with this. And it's becoming a little more vocal now in the world because it's realized also by some gurus. People get initiated, and after they get initiated, it's like a title, and then they don't do anything after that. So they depend on that title as some sort of position, status, whatever. and then they don't make any more endeavors. They kind of disappear, don't any more service. And many gurus also, you see, they're prolonging their periods before initiation. They get up to 10 years or something like that before they'll initiate somebody. That's the specialization. And why? Because the experience is that after a few years they initiate, and after that the people disappear. They don't look like they're so committed after they're initiated. So that means something is strange with the system we're using. So some devotees have thought about that. And one devotee says that the problem is that initiation is the only measure we have now of being a member of Islam. So unless you take initiation, you're not a real member. So you got a name, it's then initiated by so and so guru, then you're taken as a bona fide devotee connected or something like that to Islam. But that's a little bit artificial because some people who want to be members cannot maintain that standard. Or they're forced to do that, to be a member of Islam. And later on, when they get their title, fall down again. So it's a problem best to have a lower standard for some people who are never going to make one Islam. And also, they can still be recognized members of Islam. So another tier, a lower level of membership of Islam, where they don't be so committed, and therefore they don't have the pressure of coming up with a standard which is not maintained after some years. They fall back. So this is some suggestion of a more general kind of membership, and which to recognize instead of diksha as the membership thing. So maybe we have to change the system. No? Another problem is we have increasing number of devotees. If the movement is expanding generation after generation, we have more and more devotees, and then we have to have more and more gurus to initiate them. But we can't have so many gurus, because what happens is each guru will have thousands of disciples, and that automatically means that how can that guru act as a real guru and give teachings to everybody? Yes, Zoom, that's about it. But you can get those classes without taking initiation also. So what's the difference between initiated and uninitiated if all you do is get Zoom classes from the guru? You can get Zoom classes from any devotee in the world. So there's actually a limitation on how much a guru can give instructions to more than 30 or 40 people. It's very difficult to maintain relationships, personal relationships with more than 20 people. More than that. So when you have gurus for thousands of disciples, very difficult to keep relationships at all. Impossible. So then what to do? We have more devotees in the future. We need more and more gurus. So we have to solve that problem. Maybe we make many gurus instead of limiting so much. But then, of course, we can't lower the qualification also. So there's some problem that we have to solve. Yeah. So, the devotees need care. So one of the care is the guru has to care for the disciple. But if you've got too many disciples, that devotee care is not given. So that's a problem we have. So that's manifested even now. We have a certain amount of devotees, and maybe 60 gurus. So it's manifested even now, with the speak of the future. Of course, we have this other problem in the modern world, as the culture is different. Each generation, even half a generation, the culture keeps changing, and people are different. Youth are different in the 1970s and 2025. They're quite different. Youth is very, very different. So nowadays, the general, not just the youth, but everybody in general is very skeptical of authority, and particularly religious authority, and particularly authoritative authority, which is what the guru is. Absolute authority. So many people are automatically, allergic to such a system. So how do we attract people when we have that system where you have to accept that absolute authority on the stage? actually don't want to do it. There's another problem. So, these are some of the things that, just concerning diksha. Some aspects of it, there's other things also, of course. Okay, one other aspect, of course, is, as I said, Prabhupada did not want one guru, he wanted many gurus. So, when we get many gurus, and each guru is acting as absolute authority for their disciples, we automatically get disunity. Because loyalty to guru becomes more than loyalty to the organization. So you will follow the order of your guru rather than follow the order of the president. So that's also a big problem. How we create unity, this the variety of gurus and the absolute status given to the guru by the disciple. That means we do have to change some attitude, some of the disciples' attitude, that it changed how they think of the guru as being absolute also. Okay, so maybe we have to have localized gurus. This has come up several times when I'm traveling. Maybe the idea is just to have a guru for the local area that doesn't travel around the world, has in one place, and then all the devotees there can go to that guru anytime when they feel like it. And then it's not such a problem, more communication on the local level. Maybe forbid people, gurus to move, they've got to stay in one place all the time. And then people have access. Of course, that means more gurus, obviously. Another is to not emphasize diksha as the connection, but shiksha as the connection. And as we see in our movement, in the Bhagavad Gita, we have a parampara. It is not traced through diksha at all. It's traced through shiksha. So instead of saying you have to have a diksha guru to connect with a parampara, that's not a true statement. We can connect to our parampara through shiksha, with shiksha guru. And of course, we have Prabhupada as our main shiksha guru, as pointed out by the DBC. He's the prominent shiksha guru for every disciple of Islam. So he's a connection, also Prabhupada is an automatic connection with every disciple to the Prabhupada. So we emphasize shiksha. We also emphasize Srila Prabhupada's role as the founder acharya. We give equal relevance to the managerial as well as the diksha system. So this way, the guru should be regarded as simply preaching on behalf of ISKCON Srila Prabhupada, not as individual movements. And we give respect to everyone, give respect to our guru, our diksha guru, we give respect to our shiksha gurus, we give most respect to Srila Prabhupada. So we have to balance out how we give our respect within ISKCON. So these are some of the things in attitude towards diksha, particularly that we have to change, whatever like that. But there are many other aspects of this that we have to innovate also preach. So, okay. It's just the interactive section. Any questions?
Thanks so much. We have this doubt a long time. We learned from Chaitanya Charitamrita that Prabhupada mentioned that ISKCON is only one branch of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's three. And where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's three have five of them, the five of the floor. This is what I understand. Can you clarify? So ISKCON is just one branch, and we understand branch can't be on their own. So we have to be linked always to the trunk of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and from there there's many branches. So how that we can work in that concept, so that we can understand that we are part of the whole Vaishnava community.
Well, so when we speak of branches, we see the context is that Lord Chaitanya started the movement, so he's the guru, and then he had various followers who became branches. We have the Advaita, and we have sub-branches there. We have Nityananda, sub-branches there. Vedanta, sub-branches, and so many other devotees who are branches. So basically, they started lines of teaching or lines of diksha. But the teaching is not different. If we get a different teaching, it's not the same. It's not Lord Chaitanya's rooted in something else. So we get what's called apa-sampradayas. Those sampradayas that may claim they're following Lord Chaitanya, but philosophy is somewhat different. So those are actually rejected. They're not coming from Chaitanya root. But they may claim they are, but we don't reject it. Right? So we have Lord Chaitanya is the root of some bona fide branches who are following the same philosophy as Lord Chaitanya. So that's where the unity comes. Why are they branches? Because they take inspiration from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his philosophy, but they're coming afterwards. But same philosophy. Because they started different lines, some of these lines were hereditary lines, father to son, then we got the Goswami lines coming out of that. Followers from Lord Jana's followers, they started their own diksha lines by heredity, so then we get that kind of line. And from Vedacharya and Vedanta also. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati did not quite accept that type of line. Therefore, we rejected Bhakti and he only established a shiksha line. So Prabhupada was more interested in that shiksha line, whether the shiksha is preserved, as it should be. But just to emphasize that, he ignored the diksha lines because they went by hereditary principles, which he didn't think was proper. So in any case, the unity there is because they have all the same philosophical teachings. They may have slightly different ways in which they implement the teachings, different customs, different way they worship the deities, slightly different, but by and large, not too much different. So we can see that if we go through, let's say, the Radharaman temple in Vrindavan, basically similar type of worship, no difference in the philosophy, but the way they initiate and who they initiate will be slightly different.
Yes, in that regard, when we come to India preaching, for example, in Malaysia, so sometimes we have to work with Gaurian, which are also part of the branch. So sometimes I think European or our think that they're different.
Oh, okay. Well, in Lord Chaitanya's time, there was no real feeling of difference as such. Prabhupada has given some warnings in Chaitanya Charitamrita about some of the brothers, etc. And the reason was they were very negative towards Prabhupada's movement. That's why they criticized. So if any Gaudiya doesn't criticize, fine, we have no problem with that. If they start criticizing, then we have to keep our distance from them. That's all.
Thank you so much for sharing that much. It's very interesting, sharing, especially establishing a system where, I wouldn't call it lowering, but lesser number of rounds to be checked, to be considered accepted instead of being which initiated necessarily. But then that raises the question, this has been already going on in some Vaishnava traditions, and we have always established that 16 rounds is the minimum that we should be chanting in order to be considered seriously practicing. So that's there. And then the other thing is, even within this form, we already have systems where we have like Krishna Seva, Krishna Sadhana, Rapanashrayas at different levels to achieve the initiation stage. So possibly this could be made more standard in different ISKCON temples around the world. So this idea of vision or to be inclusive and established within ISKCON. It's just, I'm just sharing. It's interesting, but at the same time, I think we have to establish that it's not necessarily an easy path to just be in ISKCON and be complacent, but actually working our way towards initiation.
Yes, Srila Prabhupada discovers that one standard, 16 around 4 regular principles for first initiation. But then what do we do about everybody else? We either force them to come up with the standard artificially, or wait for next lifetime or whatever. Or we have some other level, which they're not forced to, and at the same time, they're still recognized as members, but obviously different standard. So this idea of second initiation is different from first initiation. It's a different standard also, so another standard. Some temples do have this idea of different levels, like Prabhupada, etc. Many temples don't. It's not an official ISKCON. If it were an official thing, then we can emphasize Prabhupada as your first step. And if you want to, you can go further. If you don't want to, stay there. If you don't feel you can do any work, then that's all. So we can various options for people at that stage. But right now, that's not a universal standard. But maybe it's better to introduce something like that.
Maharaj, thank you, Maharaj. What's one thing you mentioned about Diksha from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur? Did he ever take the second initiation also? Because I never heard.
Prabhupada.
Yes.
Oh, when we say Diksha, that means second. In Bhaktisiddhanta's movement, Diksha was only second. There was no first initiation. There was only one initiation, second. The first is called Nam. That's all. It wasn't an initiation. So we say Diksha, that was not very
Interesting. Thank you for the clarification.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, I was thinking, Krishna annihilated, he arranged for the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty because of Kali Yuga, and then he didn't want anyone to take the names of Krishna's descendants. But then we have Chaitanya Mahaprabhu coming, and we have Advaita Vamsa and Nityananda Vamsa. So, and they continue in that line, and probably, the way we see them is like they're directly, Advaita is Mahavishnu, and Nityananda is the original personality of Balaram. So how do we deal with people coming in that lineage, and in what way should we deal with them?
So we can always give respect. We give respect to all Vaishnavas, and if they come in a lineage very sacred, like Nityananda, who is not coming from Balaram, Advaitacharya, who is coming from Mahavishnu, we give respect to their line, but we give most respect to spiritual advancement, not to a line like that. So we can respect them as Vaishnavas and coming in a line. At the same time, we give more respect if they do have some level of spiritual advancement. So the idea of initiation rites by birth is not original to the devotees. The Sri Sampradaya has the same thing. So they have their Diksha gurus appointed by Brahmacharya, I think 70-something persons in there, Brahman families carrying on Diksha lines with their sons and grandsons, and they would go to Diksha guru, people like that. So it's not nothing new. It's some other Sampradayas do as well. So that's their thought. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's idea was that we should not just regard birthright as every level, but it's like born Brahmanas are not necessarily more advanced than a person born in a Vaishnava family or Shukra family. Sudra may be a better Vaishnava than a Brahman, born Brahman. So that's basically what we're trying to do by not recognizing those lines or in very lines.
I'm from China and I'm a new Christian study student. Today I learned some information for GBC and what is the management system for Krishna. One is the knowledge system for Bhagwan. So these two systems I learned from today. But if as a new coming from Krishna, I want to know how we can get the right way to know all these things. Yes, so not easy. Because one is the energy system, like the temple, because it's the first time I come here and I see the temple. It's not like China because we have all the knowledge before. It's the temple is one idea of the temple, but when I come here it's another. And also for the knowledge, it's the same, like Bhagwan, I read the book. And this for the knowledge of the soul. So it's two systems.
Well, yeah. So the basic philosophy is in the books, so that's common. So we have Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavata, etc. So that's common. I don't think there's any dispute about that, whether it's in Chinese language or English language. So the difference will probably come is because you're in China and isolated from other places, not familiar with how temples operate,
Yes.
and their customs, whatever. So for that, of course, there's some basic rules given by GBC about duties of temple presidents and how they function, etc. Some basic things. But even then, the different countries may adapt those rules according to their own situation. So there's some differences also due to place because of legal considerations, etc. And even preaching may be different because in Malaysia you can only preach in a certain way. You're not preaching to Muslims or whatever. Other countries, no problem like that. So we have Muslim going some places around the world. In England, there's one in Saudi Arabia. It's a great deal. We have one in America. Yeah, so we have to adapt some things according to time and place. It may differ. Other principles, philosophy is the same. General management is the same. But some China probably legally you cannot have an organization also. It's going to be a little different.
Everything seems to be so
Yeah, I think because in China you have to do things very quietly and you're not so free to do things also, but here is a little more free, so that's different.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, there are people in ISKCON and outside of ISKCON who are saying that Prabhupada's books and his instructions should not be edited and should not be changed. And just like to know what is your opinion on this matter?
So editing in its true form will not change the meaning. It will correct grammar, maybe choice of words, etc. The basic meaning does not change. So objections now are not so much on changing the real meaning, it's maybe they like certain words better than other words. So one example is Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the most common expression for Bhagavan. In Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Vacha. And in the 72 edition, it says the Blessed Lord said. So, which do we take? Supreme Personality of Godhead said, or Blessed Lord said. So, some people will say 72 version was approved by Prabhupada, you should not change that. So, if they changed it in the next edition, they said that's wrong. But then when Prabhupada in his original manuscript says Supreme Personality of Godhead, which one do we take? Original version or 72 edited version by Agripa? Which is the more correct version? So, it's not like that. It's not many questions are like that. It's not so much a change of meaning, but a choice of words.
So you can confirm that it's just a change of terminology.
If you can find a place where it's a real change of meaning that radically changes the philosophy, give it up, and we'll 100% what you think about it.
question, Raj. Thank you for the explanation. I have this question just now. I was thinking the five principles. You are explaining the five principles. It's come to be it's not future. And I try to understand from the era of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and also the six Goswamis. The five principles that you are explaining just now. I'm trying to relate that with the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the six Goswamis. During Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's guru is also what brother of Nityananda Prabhu. They are not, am I right? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's guru Vishwara Puri.
Mahaprabhu is what brother of Nityananda Prabhu?
That's not.
No.
Mahaprabhu's guru is God.
They are from different, considered from different guru. I mean, not guru. The guru's guru are the same.
Which are for you?
Yeah.
I think the same group. I'll check that out.
Okay. This is what I understand from the Chaitanya Sadhanata. Okay. The same situation sometimes happens now in this one also. That means somebody who can be contemporary with me, actually a disciple from different gurus, different gurus disciple. Okay. So in that way, sometimes people take it in a very different way, how to deal with them, how to. So in this five principles, how we can.
How do we deal with gurus? We have many gurus and many disciples. Well,
And
as I
also-
said, this becomes a problem for dissension. If we think of my guru and my thing is different from your guru and your guru, then we get different movements automatically. So we can't think of differences. So you have a devotion to your guru in terms of spiritual instructions, but that doesn't make you superior to every other guru and their disciples. Say my guru is superior to your guru. That should never be that. They're all gurus under the Prabhupada. They're all servants of Prabhupada. That's all. So that's why we have to change the conception of guru as the absolute authority. It's simply an authority under the Prabhupada, that's all. And then all gurus are under Prabhupada, and therefore we want to make conflict. So immediately you think of my guru is better than your guru, then we do have different groups. My guru is teaching the true Prabhupada, your guru is not teaching the true Prabhupada. We have divisions about it. So we shouldn't think like that.
As I understand, to relate that with the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time, also some similar situation there work as a big team for the extension of the Sankirtan. Even Dr. Das Thakur and Srinivas Acharya and Shamananda, they have a different Diksha Guru, but Shiksha Guru is Jiva Goswami, and I think they work very closely to extend the movement of Chaitanya. This is what I understand.
Yeah, they want to think in terms of differences.
So, in the same way, how we can apply that in this five principles, like I explained just now, the five principles, where it comes actually. So, the five principles that I explained,
Yeah.
so where it comes, how we can really work on that.
Well, in terms of guru, we would have to change our concept of guru and the significance of picture guru in comparison to Shiksha guru and Srila Prabhupada. So we probably have to change the disciple has to change his conception of their Shiksha guru relation to other gurus and the Shiksha gurus and Srila Prabhupada. So that's an innovation of sorts that change that conception. But it should always be scriptural, obviously. I have another presentation tomorrow on gurus, so they come up there also.
Maybe one last question before we end the session.
That was one of the
Maharaj, I've got one last question. This is regarding, just like to seek your opinion, since you mentioned the AI, use of AI in preaching, right? So we are all dealing with it now in our work, we have to use AI, and in some situations it's facilitating matters, but in a situation where we are preaching, like let's take astrology for example, you can use AI to do astrology, but it still lacks the intelligence and the insight of an astrologer, for instance. So when it comes to preaching, we can use AI, but to what extent are we going to using this?
Yeah, to what extent we can use AI? Well, yeah, AI will say things that you like. It likes to please you. It may change the facts. I think sometimes in wars, may not always be factual. That's what it says also. So yeah, we have to be careful. We can use it for basic fact finding of that. And maybe it can be used in certain cases for coming out with a conclusion to some very difficult things, but it's all sorts of factors, but we can't take it as absolute in any case. So we always have to filter it with our own intelligence.
Krishna, thank you very much. Tomorrow session 11:15 in Temple Hall. Please all assemble there. You can bring all your devotees also. And also in YouTube, we put Bhanu Swami lectures. All lectures are available. Hare Krishna.
Dear devotees,